evening, lovelies. It has been a long day at the bar today. I've been testing cocktails with my friend Faustine, and it went well. It went well. We've tested a lot of cocktails, and now I am at home washing down the alcohol with some cold water. Whew. Testing cocktails is a lot harder than it looks. Firstly, you know, as somebody who's not as somebody who makes many cocktails, I just assume that you could add alcohol and it would taste good. It doesn't. There is definitely a strong science to it. I will talk about that in another video. Yeah, it's also difficult because when you're making cocktails, there's a limit to how much you can test cocktails before you're not able to continue. And so I still got to find a way of testing cocktails without getting drunk. It's harder than it sounds. So a bit of cold water. Oh, that's good. Right, so this evening I'm making a quick video. It's probably not going to be that quick actually, but it's one that I debated whether to make or not, because a few videos ago I did a reaction to a guy who was setting up a bar in Kigali, and I watched the video because I am also setting up a bar/restaurant in Kigali, and I wanted to see if we had any similarities in our experience. And the video was filmed by this lady whose name I will put up here. And I usually would not react twice to the same channel because it kind of feels like I'm targeting them, but I'm really not. It's just that one of my viewers, she left a comment saying, oh, you know, this person's done another video about, you know, struggling to live in Kigali. And I watched that and I kind of like, yeah, you know, I empathize with a lot of it. It can be tough sometimes, and you know, I recognised a lot of what she was saying. But when I was watching that, I saw another one that she'd done. And the title was, "That Time I Almost Got Attacked by a Mob in Kigali." I thought, that sounds like an interesting title, so I started to watch it. I haven't watched all of it. I flick through and I get the gist. I know roughly what it's about. And that's why I stopped, because I thought this one I might like to react to, you know, together, to watch it together, because what happened to her is something I have had a little bit of experience of myself in the past, and it's a bit of a shocker when it happens. And when it happened to me, it was several years ago, and so it was a bit more of a shocker to realise that it still happens today. And so yeah, I thought I'd have a little look at it, and then I thought I'd look at some of the comments, because I felt that the comments were a little bit harsh given what had happened. So basically, she went to a busy market in Kigali, and things didn't go very well. So let's roll the video and I'll tell you a bit more about my experience as we go. All right, so like I said, you know, I'm not specifically targeting this channel. I just saw this headline and I thought, you know, I've got to see what this is about.
Why you? Excuse me. I'm not taking a picture of you. Don't touch me. I'm gonna call police. No.
You can hear she's extremely distressed. I think she might be related to the guy who was setting up the bar. So I think she might be American Eritrean as well. I'm not 100% certain. Oh. Turn that up a bit.
Hi, you guys. So hopefully this mic will work. Last time when I had recorded, it stopped working, so I'll try to speak loud in case it stops. So I had a scary thing happen to me just now. So I went to, I met up with a friend yesterday. I have a friend here who's from the Netherlands, and yeah, we've known each other. I think we met, I want to say in 2024 or late 2023.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
how they were going to go to the
Oh,
market today, and I've never been there. It's called Nyabugogo. I've passed by there.
all right. So if you don't know, Nyabugogo is the main bus terminal in Kigali. It's a huge area, and like there are two places in Kigali. Like Kigali's very safe, but there are two places where you keep hold of your wallet. The first one is Nyamirambo, which is the oldest part of the city and had, well, I said it has a reputation, but it had past tense a reputation for being a little bit Wild West, the frontier. It's kind of been gentrified heavily over the past few years. So now it kind of just looks like every other part of Kigali, which is a bit of a shame because it had real character. But yeah, Nyamirambo used to be an area where you had to be a little bit careful. But Nyabugogo is still chaos. It is just like hundreds and hundreds of buses going all across the country, going internationally to Uganda, Tanzania, like all over the place. You can go anywhere from Nyabugogo, and as such, it is just full of people. There is a junction there. I've filmed it a couple of times on rides. It is chaos. You think the Sonotubes roundabout is bad? You ain't seen nothing till you've seen the Nyabugogo junction. So there are just people constantly milling around from all over the place. If you're going to get pickpocketed or your bag snatched or your phone snatched, Nyabugogo is one of those kind of places just because there's so many people. It's crazy busy.
Every time I've gone to a place outside of Kigali, it's a hub where there's like buses and
it is the
markets and yeah, so there's a lot of, it could be considered a transit area, but I've never been to that market, so I said, yeah, I'll come, why not?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, most people wouldn't go if you don't have to, just because it's so much. Most tourists, if they're going to go to Isoko, to a market, would go to Kimironko. I've done a video about that with my friend Leandra. We'll talk about that more in a moment because it is linked to what happened to her at Nyabugogo. But yeah, I wouldn't suggest that it's a nice place to walk around. I mean, you can go, obviously you can go, but I wouldn't say it's fun. It's chaos, it's hectic.
And I was thinking, yeah, you know, as always, I like to record, I like to take pictures. I have never had any problems so far. Granted, you know, I'm careful because, again, I live in an area, Kagugu, but it's close to Gachiriro, where there's heavy police presence and residents of, you know, the first family, so I'm careful. And if anybody tells me don't record me, I would be respectful of that. I understand, you know, you take a chance when you're recording in public, not everybody wants to be on camera. But when we went, and I'm going to show footage of it, we went into the market where they had the fruits and vegetables, and I was recording. I think only one person, she was like, no, I don't want to be camera, but she moved. I was going, you know, so I didn't need to put down my camera because she moved out of the way anyway. But the rest of the people, yes, they were staring at me. I don't know if some people didn't want to be on camera. Nobody actually said, like, put down your camera. So
we'll get into this more in a moment. Nobody will tell you put down your camera. It's not in the Rwandan culture or attitude to be confrontational, and especially about telling a foreigner not to do something. We'll talk about more of this in a moment. I can see exactly where this is going.
So we walked around, we bought fruits, vegetables, they bought some other stuff, and then we went outside of the market we were in and walked outside, and I was like, oh, I'm outside, let me record. And again, you know, people stare, but nobody said anything to me. And I did see two police officers across the street from me. And we were trying to go to the butcher because CJ's friend, you know, wanted to buy meat. I didn't realize while I was recording they had already went inside. So I was like, oh, I lost track, you know, I lost them again. So I went inside as I was recording, but I was kind of trying to look out for them. And instantly, I was busy, like, trying to see where they were. And I turned a corner, and when I did, these two ladies, let me stop. Okay, I'm continuing the video. I'm gonna speak up because, again, I don't know, the mic situation is weird. So where I left off, I was saying there were these two ladies. Sorry, I'm adjusting the camera. There were these two ladies that passed by me, and then they turned around, and they were literally like screaming. First of all, they were speaking Kinyarwanda, and I was like confused. And then, I mean, I could tell.
Well, they would be speaking Kinyarwanda because you're in Rwanda. Sorry, I don't mean to be, you know, but that isn't odd. That's kind of to be expected.
screaming. First of all, they were speaking Kinyarwanda, and I was like confused. And then, I mean, I could tell that it was something to do with the camera, but they were screaming. And I'm like I was trying to say, no, Kinyarwanda, I don't speak Kinyarwanda. But when people, I'm sorry, but there's some people who just, I don't know, not right in the head. Instead of saying, trying to understand that I don't speak it, because I was speaking in English, obviously, and they kept going, and I was like, no, Kinyarwanda, and they were screaming at me, and I was so frustrated because they were literally like, just screaming, and I don't know what they were saying, and other people were saying things, and I was just like, I stopped recording. That's the thing. I stopped recording, but I had the phone in my hand, and I got frustrated because they were so aggressive. I'm talking about, like, you would think that I said something mean to them, that I touched them. Literally, they didn't even say, like, no camera, and wait for me to turn off. They were screaming at me and saying things in camera. I'm like, no, I don't know. I don't know what you're saying. They could hear me speaking English, obviously. I don't know why they kept speaking in Kinyarwanda.
Well, they probably don't speak English. That's why. I mean, you know, a lot of people don't. A lot of people are francophone. You know, Kinyarwanda is most people's first and sometimes only language. So, you know, I don't know why they didn't speak in English. Well, yeah, I'm not digging into her here because I know that was an extremely frightening situation. She described it as frustrating, but in the moment, I imagine it was actually quite scary. I've been in very similar situations, and the language barrier exacerbates it, makes it a lot harder.
So anyway, I was like frustrated, and I was like, let me just go out. So I went out. And then I was like, I'm outside, let me start recording, because it's instant that they had a problem with. Instantly, some guy, I guess he's a butcher, he comes and he's like, no, don't record me, turn off the camera. I don't know. He literally like came straight at me. He was, first of all, he was flinging his hand like, move. And I was just like, in my head, I'm like, what the fuck are you? You know what I mean? Like, there's a way to come at people, but whatever. So then he's like, no, delete it. And I mean, instantly, you guys, when he came, oh my God. There were so many people who surrounded me. It happened like instantly.
Yeah.
Literally, everybody surrounded me. He was grabbing my arm. Other people were grabbing my iPhone. I could feel my backpack being pulled. I was like, oh my God. Literally, you guys, you know, you think like, oh, she's just exaggerating. I was being attacked.
No, I promise you she's not exaggerating. I've seen this happen. I've seen it happen. Yeah, Rwanda is an extremely calm country. Rwandans are extremely calm until they're not. And the minute that they're not, it's extreme. It's extreme. The first time that ever happened to me, I'll talk about it more. I'm doing a series at the moment called Now and Then, which talks about how I first ever came to Rwanda in 2007, and my time as a volunteer here for 2 years. And I haven't quite got to it yet, but I'm getting there. I will cover it soon. Is one of my weirdest days at work is the day that I was in the office and I heard shouting in the street. And 2 seconds before, the street had been empty. There were like 2 or 3 people walking past, going about their daily business. And then there was a boy in the street. I mean, bear in mind, this was like almost 20 years ago now, so it was a long time ago. But there was a boy in the street, and within seconds, I could have counted to 5. And in that time, it went from nobody to, I'd say, about 50 people like that. And they were beating him. They beat him. His trousers were falling down. And it was dramatic, and it was violent, and it was immediate. And it turned out the boy was a thief, or had been accused of stealing something. No discussion, no police, no judicial process. It was just instant. And I was in a very uncomfortable position because as a white person and a woman, there is a chance that if I had strode out there into the middle of the street and shouted for people to stop, people might have stopped. They might. But there is also the potential there that I would have been carried away kicking and screaming and locked in a room somewhere. So, you know, it was... Well, you can find out. I'll explain how I reacted to that when I get to it in the series. There was another time 2015. So what that's about, well, that's just over 10, 11 years now. Um, ironically, I was leading a human rights session at the time. And at that time, the UK had done something a bit silly and detained a very important Rwandan diplomat who was travelling on a diplomatic passport. And yeah, it got really out of hand. There was a mass protest outside the British embassy. If you were British, you were persona non grata at the time. And I was supervising some international human rights students, international rights students, and they basically they were doing Umuganda, which is National Community Service Day, and they were like chopping grass and yeah, doing sort of community service in the community, like locals. Yeah, as we were leaving, somebody clocked my British accent, and immediately there were people and there were calls for me to stand up in public and account for my government's actions, which of course, you know, I am not my government. I am British, obviously. I didn't agree really with what my government had just done, but it wasn't my place to speak on behalf or to account for my government. I'm not part of the government. I am not involved in any of the decisions, you know. It was not my call, and, you know, but there was a very, very strong sentiment, and suddenly a lot of people who wanted me to stand up and explain myself and my country. And thankfully, my logistics manager at the time, a guy called Vincent, absolute star, took me by the elbow and walked me very quickly out of there and onto the bus. So, you know, there have been other incidents. There have been other times when I have seen it go from 0 to 1,000 like that. And this is something in Rwanda that you will possibly experience if you stick around long enough, is everything is very calm, very safe, very respectful, until it isn't. And the second it isn't, it's like that. I watch a lot of Japanese YouTubers, and I've heard it's very similar there. There's like almost this pathological politeness, like nobody will swear, nobody will raise their voice, nobody will tell you not to do something. It's a pathological politeness until it isn't, and then it's like Krakatoa or Nyiragongo. It's like a volcanic eruption. So, you know, I mean, yeah. I'll explain a bit more about why I think this happened to her shortly. And I am actually extremely sympathetic towards her because, of course, if you read the hype, then, you know, Rwanda is an extremely safe place and very welcoming to foreigners. And of course, foreigners are tourists, and tourists take pictures. And, you know, who goes to a foreign country and doesn't put it on Instagram, you know, nowadays? You know, so in her mind, she's come from a very free country. I think she's American, you know, and to her, nothing like this would ever cross your mind that this could happen. And so I'll explain why I think it did in a minute. But I feel anything I go on to say, and even if I make a bit of a joke about, yeah, well, of course people speak in Rwanda, even if I'm joking a little bit, I sympathise with her hugely because she wasn't expecting it. You know, she didn't know. There was no reason she should have.
I was so scared. That's why instantly I have a little bit of footage because I didn't get a chance to stop the camera at that moment. And I was like, no, I was like, don't touch me. And I was like, thank God I noticed the police. And again, because I didn't know where CJ and her friend were, I couldn't even call out to them. I couldn't even try to put on the Wi-Fi or my hotspot from one of my phones to call her because literally I was accosted. Like, I don't even know how many people there were. I just knew there was like him, the guy with the white trench coat, who's the butcher, like grabbing my arm, telling me to delete it, other people trying to grab my phone, like people touching me. I was just like, oh my God, I'm being attacked. Like, first of all, they're going to take my phone. They're attacking me. Nobody's going to help me. I'm like, I screamed because I'm like, why isn't the police looking this way? They were tending to somebody who was on the ground. Imagine. I don't know if she fainted or whatever, but I'm like, I don't know how. I left the group. Somehow they were still grabbing me. I ran to them, to the police, and I said, I was like so getting upset because, and then they followed me. And I was like, he is grabbing me. There's a man over there grabbing me and attacking me. And I'm showing them how, like moving my shirt. And they come and they're still like, phone, the telephone, and she shouldn't be recording. And my God, the police, you guys, he was just like, imagine I'm coming after being attacked by people, by a mob, a fucking mob.
Yeah, the police can be very hit and miss. Sometimes you'll get somebody who's amazing, and sometimes there's almost a sort of looking in the opposite direction. Like I've had a traffic accident recently, and myself and the person involved, we pulled over, and there were two traffic police standing about 5 yards away, and I was calling and waving and doing this to get them to come over. In Rwanda, if you do that, it means, you know, come over here. Would they come? No, they took one look at me and it's like, foreigner, more hassle than it's worth. And eventually we pulled over somewhere else, and the guy just said, yeah, you know, if you get the police involved, like, we'll all lose our license and da 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 da. It was only a minor prang. But, you know, coming from the UK, there is a protocol. The protocol is you both stop, you exchange insurance details, you go on your way, your insurance sorts it out. And no, I mean, would the police come out? No. I also had another one. I was on the back of a moto once, and the moto drove down a hill, forgot to apply the brakes, and went straight into the side of a van. And, you know, the guys in the van came out. They're like, oh, you know, no. Again, traffic police, 5 yards away, just like, just watching the clouds go by. He knew perfectly well what had just happened. But again, I think he saw foreigner and thought, oh, yeah, no, yeah, more than my job's worth, really, you know, and just left us to it. Didn't even come over, didn't even, you know, do anything. So it doesn't surprise me if a foreigner is involved. It doesn't surprise me that the police don't offer assistance or don't, you know, don't suddenly jump to intervene. I do think it's something the country's got to work on, because it's a little bit shocking if you are a foreigner and you are in need of assistance or help, or something like that has happened, and especially to a woman being like grabbed and hassled by, you know, a guy. Police should really, at the very least, separate the two and find out what the story is, you know, rather than just sort of, you know. But I believe her. I've seen it happen.
And he's just like, he was kind of like, because they're all surrounding him. Also, he had a machine gun, but he was just kind of like, not even like, oh, it's okay, let me find out. He was just more like, oh, do you have permission to... I said, I'm a foreigner, I'm a visitor here. I came here just as a tourist, and I'm taking pictures. I didn't know you couldn't take... He's like, do you have permission to record here? I'm like, I didn't know I needed it.
She doesn't. She did nothing wrong. If you are a professional film crew, if you are filming for broadcast, if you're here for the news, or you're filming a documentary, or you're a professional production company, then you need a permit. But if you are just a human being with a social media channel and you're just doing it for fun, or you're doing holiday photographs or clips, you know, I mean, Rwandans don't need a permit either, you know. It is, you know, it's kind of a free country in that respect. You can take photographs and you can take videos and you can post to social media. She did nothing wrong there. She doesn't need a permit. And I've had police. Oh my goodness, the worst one I ever encountered is some years back. There was a big conference called CHOGM, which was the Commonwealth, heads of Commonwealth states were here doing something. And there was advertised this big market in the centre of town. It was like, yeah, come along, it's going to be great fun. It's, you know, lots of stalls and things to do. And I turned up there. My friend had actually got a shop there, and I went to see her. I got there, all of the shops were closed. There were about like 10 big burly guards with massive machine guns standing around. It was like the atmosphere there was just not one that you would want to step into.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I feel quite right about just walking down the road with the camera, but I might give it a go and see what happens. But like I say, you're not really supposed to film policemen, and there's one in every single shot, like on every street corner, so I don't know if I can. But just behind us, on the road behind us, that's where the street market is. So I think we'll be absolutely fine if we wander over there and have a little film. So I'll show you around.
And just outside my friend's stall were a line of e-bikes. And I was thinking, oh, this would be a great opportunity to photograph the e-bikes to show how green Kigali is. And, you know, the steps that Kigali is making towards, you know, green public transport.
Oh, look at these. Public street bikes. Haven't seen these before.
And I took my camera out to photograph. Actually, I think it was my little Insta 360 on a rod, and I was just doing an artsy photograph of the bikes. Instantly, two police officers like that. It was like, and they were sort of like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm photographing the e-bikes." And they're like, "You're not allowed to take photographs." And I was like, "But this is a public market." And at that point, that's when I turned around and I saw like tumbleweed. Like there was nobody there, like no tourists, nobody. And all of the stalls that were supposed to be selling handcrafts and stuff, they were closed. Like there was nobody there. My friend who had a stall there later told me that the local council had come and paid her a visit and suggested that it would be a very good idea if she paid $200 to have a stall at the Chogam market. And she said, well, you know, what could I do? I paid and I set up a stall. She said she didn't make a single sale the entire weekend. And no wonder, because people turning up for this fun day out and all they find are these military guys with guns and like nothing going on. And so I said to the guy, but you know, I'm here for the market. And they're like, what market? And I was like pointing to the stalls behind me, which are all closed.
Hello. I'm going to the street market for Chogam.
Wait.
Here, street market.
Here?
Yeah, for the shops.
And they said, you're not allowed to film here. And I'm like, I'm thinking in my head exactly what she's thinking. I don't need permission. It's a public space. I am not photographing a government building. I'm not photographing the police. I'm not photographing the military. It's a public space and it's a tourism event. Of course I'm allowed to take a picture. Exactly as she said. And it's like, no. And they forced me to put my camera away and to go home. I literally got on the next moto out of there. It was the weirdest atmosphere. There's almost this kind of dual personality of, oh, invite the tourists, it's going to be fun, we're going to have a fun time with tourists and everybody can come and take photographs, and then sort of, oh no, but we must control the tourists, we must control them, and we must prevent anybody from taking pictures or posting anything about this. It's like almost the public persona can't make up its mind. It's, are we having a public event here and everybody's having fun and we can all like take pictures and, you know, videos and social media, or are we not? And we don't want anybody to take them, and we need these men with big guns to stand guard to make sure that nobody takes any pictures of anything. It's like, make up your mind, because as a tourist, you read about Rwanda being so safe and so easy to go as a tourist, as a traveller, that there is no reason, from reading the hype about visiting, there is no reason at all she could ever have assumed something like this would happen. But it did, and it can. And you need to be aware of it. You do need to be aware of it. And I'm going to talk about why it happened shortly. I know I keep saying that. I am going to get onto it. But problem is I can see it from both sides, but I really empathise with her. I've had very, very similar sort of experiences and situations over the years, and it makes your heart hurt a little bit, because you want this to be somewhere that is really easy for tourists and, you know, oh, it's all really good and fun, and as it should be, but there is definitely not a zero chance that this could happen to you.
You know what I mean? And then thank God, CJ and her friend, I saw them behind the cop, and I was like, oh my God, familiar faces, because I think they heard the commotion and they're like, what's happening? And then when they saw me, they saw the orange scarf, they ran over. But I was so upset. She was just like, let's go, let's leave. I was so upset, guys. Like I was shaking, and
Yeah, I
like
bet.
I in that moment, I swear I was like, oh my god, I'm being attacked, and there's a mob around me. There's police over there, but if I don't scream, they may not know, and until it's too late, my phone will be gone. Maybe I don't know. And the thing is, like again how it started, I'm in shock because the ladies were screaming at me. They didn't even say like no camera off, nothing. They were screaming at me, and I was like, I already turned off the camera. I wasn't recording when they were screaming at me. I was just trying to say I don't speak Kinyarwanda English. But it's almost like what I was saying to them was an argument. I don't know if they're used to just arguing with people over nothing, because me speaking to
I think pretty much everybody in Rwanda knows the word English, but in Kinyarwanda, the word for English is Chongriza. So it doesn't sound anything like English. So Mvuga Chongriza is I speak English. So to say English, 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 most people, most people, 90% of people will know what the word English means, but in Kinyarwanda, it doesn't sound like that. It's Chongriza. So, you could be shouting English, English. And if somebody doesn't speak English, they only speak Kinyarwanda, they're listening for the word Chongriza, it's not coming. Maybe I'm being a bit generous there, but yeah, that could happen.
And I was so confused. I'm like, why are they yelling at me? I'm just saying no Kinyarwanda, English only. And then when he came at me, they were aggressive, but they didn't get physical. Imagine a man coming at you, aggressive, touching you, grabbing you, saying you should leave. That's okay, I would have left. But the thing is, he was grabbing me. Like, what? And then the people to surround me, and whatever, you can side with him, but to get physical with me and grab my phone and grab my backpack and grab my arm, oh my god, I swear to God, you guys,
Terrifying.
subhanallah, nothing like that has ever happened to me in any country. It's not like I've been to 50 countries.
I've seen videos of it happening to somebody in Cameroon. Exactly the same thing happened. Is they were walking around the streets of Cameroon and they were filming, and a mob basically just descended on them saying, stop filming, you're not allowed to film. So it does happen in other countries. It can happen in other countries. And many countries have a ban on photographing like anything to do with government building, things like that.
Nothing like that has ever happened to me in any country. It's not like I've been to 50 countries. I think I've been to like 15, maybe 14, 15. I've been to Morocco. I've been to Jordan. I've been to South Africa. I've been to Kenya. I've been to Costa Rica. Okay, I've been to Saudi Arabia. I've been to Turkey. I've been to Ethiopia, Eritrea. I've been to Jamaica. Nothing. I've lived in the States, in the Bay Area. I've lived in New York. I've been to Roughneck Heights. I have never, ever, ever had something like this happen to me before. I'm in shock right now. I am so in shock because the way, not only the aggressiveness, but the fact that they were like instantly getting physical and trying to take shit from me and attack me physically. Oh my God.
The first time it ever happened to me, the first time I ever became aware of how sensitive photographs are in Rwanda, was very shortly after I arrived in country in 2007. And we were out for a friend's birthday party. We were at Solaluna, which is a pizza restaurant, which is still here today, up near Kisamente. And we were out and we'd just had an amazing meal. We'd all had pizza, we'd all had dessert. It was a wonderful evening, really lovely. And at the end of the evening, we were having a group photograph. And one of the guys, he stood up and we all got together, we were all like lined up, smiling for our photograph, takes the photograph, and within seconds you hear like you hear the chairs go back. We didn't even know that there was somebody sitting behind us. There was a group of 3 men directly behind us. We hadn't even seen them, they weren't in our field of vision, and they were on their feet and they were shouting at us, and it's like they were livid, they were incandescent at the fact that we'd taken a group photograph and they just happened to be sitting behind. If they hadn't done that, we wouldn't even noticed. I don't think they were even in the photograph. But yeah, the second that we took that photograph, the screech of chairs and the anger just whoosh. And again, I'll explain why in a minute.
I'm calm now, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna talk about this. And she felt really bad, you know. My friend felt so bad. She's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, that's not your fault. How would you even know that this was going to happen?
No, you
Because she was like,
wouldn't.
you have to be careful about recording. I'm like, I understand that in any country, every country is different. But so far, when I've been recording in public, nobody has said anything to me. And I'm careful a lot of times. If it's like government building, if there's police officers, I'm not recording. So, and if someone tells me no, I will stop recording. I'm not going to.
It's not about that. It's mostly not about that. Often, if she's wandering around recording, she's probably out and about. You know, Tarmac Road, Kigali is pretty cosmopolitan nowadays. People are relaxed and calm in a way that they weren't even like 5-10 years ago. And you know, a lot more Rwandans now are doing social media like Instagram and, you know, YouTube and things like that. So people know what it is, especially like if you're under 30, people know what it is. But the reason it's difficult here, and I think she hasn't quite understood, is for tourists coming to Rwanda, 1994 is an interesting piece of recent history. For people living here, it was recent experience. And, you know, the victims and the perpetrators live together because they have to, because the majority of the country committed an atrocity against the minority of the country. And, you know, you can't just make the majority of the country go to jail. You know, that wouldn't really be practically possible. So, you know, Gacaca came in, which is the whole Truth and Reconciliation Council in Rwanda, based on the South African Truth and Reconciliation Council. And, you know, over many decades now, people have learnt to live together. And yeah, but there are a lot of people in the country who did a lot of things that they are really not proud of, really not proud of. And that adds a very different level of pressure when somebody points a camera in your direction. Like, you know, a lot of people do not want to be seen on camera. They do not want their faces on camera, on video, in photographs at all, especially above a certain age. Because, well, firstly as well, you don't know where it's going to be shown. You know, you don't know who this person is. This is what I said about her previous video. You know, there is a lot of reticence here about just being on camera and just being yourself and just talking. It's not a natural response, because, you know, isn't natural for anybody. I mean, it's natural for me because I do YouTube. I've chosen to do this. I have chosen to sit in front of a camera. And if you go back and you watch some of my older videos, you can see how damn awkward I was. You know, even with a theatre degree behind me, I was damn awkward on camera. You know, I think, you know, stage was fine because you do a performance and it goes well or it doesn't, but it's over. Nobody sees it again. But, you know, once you commit something to video, it's there forever, you know, so you've got to be very comfortable in yourself and in your topic of conversation in order to sit down and do this. And so, you know, as well, the more videos you make, the more you forget that other people aren't that comfortable. That's why most of my videos don't show my friends. Like, I'll go to my friends' houses and, you know, I might go out somewhere with my friends, but I tend not to show them on camera because I know that they're uncomfortable about it. And especially when you're walking around somewhere like Nyabugogo market, I had exactly the same experience when I went to Kimironko. If you watch my video about Kimironko market with Leandra, the mistake she's making there is that she's filming first and expecting people to tell her to stop recording if they're not comfortable. No Rwandan's going to do that. You know, it's not in people's nature to go up and tell somebody that they feel uncomfortable. There's an old Rwandan saying that it used to be rude. If you went to visit somebody's house and you were hungry, it was rude to ask for something to eat. It was rude to tell your host you were hungry because it suggested that the host had been a bad host for not psychically divining the fact that you were hungry and providing enough food. It's that kind of culture, you know, you don't just freely express how you're feeling. Even today, even young people, it is that held in. And, you know, nobody's going to go up to her and they're going to sit there feeling really uncomfortable. I'll show you in a moment what happened and you'll see what I mean. You will be able to see from body language most of the time if somebody's comfortable or not. Not always, but, you know. But you can't start filming and expect somebody to tell you to stop. It's not how it would work here. What you have to do, and what I did at Kimironko, is we asked people, is it okay to film? And some people said yes, and some said no. In fact, we went to a butcher at Kimironko, and the butcher was there, and he was absolutely not having it. No photograph, no, not at all. There was a lady selling indagara, so dried fish, and she was really happy. She's like, yeah, sure, take a photograph. And then the woman next to her said, oh, but you didn't ask me, and I don't want to be in it. So I promised her, you know, I'll blur her out, which is why when you watch the video, there's one lady's indagara, and I think I either panned her out entirely or her face is blurred. And then there was another guy who was preparing fish and he didn't want to be seen either. But he said, it's okay, you can film what I'm doing, just don't film my face. Ask before you do it. Don't expect anybody to tell you they're uncomfortable once that camera is on them. And like I said, you know, there are a lot of people here who, for whatever reason, and they don't have to explain their reason because, you know, that's totally fine. It's personal, up to them. But they don't want to be seen on camera or have a picture taken of them. It's very, very common for that to happen. So again, you know, there is no reason she could have known that because of course she's here in Rwanda today, having come from probably a Western country. You know, she's aware of 94 and that it happened in the history of the country, but she doesn't understand how much it still impacts and affects the country today. So, you know, that is not a reason she's giving as to why that had happened, because that she hasn't thought that one. But I would suggest it could have something to do with it. In fact, that was definitely what happened at Sola Luna, is they thought we were taking pictures of, you know, and, you know, they might have thought that we were using the group photograph as an excuse to catch their faces on camera and pass it on to somebody. There is that level of paranoia.
So, and if someone tells me no, I will stop recording. I'm
They
not going
won't
to be like,
tell you
okay,
no.
they said don't put a camera on me, I'm still going to record. I can be respectful in that way.
No, they're not going to tell
But
you
this
no.
was like, oh my God, I'm in shock. I've never had that happen to me. And in a country like this, in a country like Rwanda, right, where it's safe. Yeah, it's safe because the government, this is where I'm going to go off, because the government has a tight hold on the society and makes sure there's a fear that people have of authority. But I'm sorry to say, but this gave me like, you know, I'm not making judgment. I've been here for 2 years, so there's a lot of observations I've made and I've kept quiet, but I'm not shocked. In a way, I'm not shocked by that because there's certain feelings I've had, not like people will attack me, but you feel the energy of people, and that gave me a little bit of insight into how instantly like that, over a fucking camera, that people will attack you and not even like surround you as a mob, side with whoever came at you. He didn't even...
I am going to say I am surprised that it happened today. Like I said, I've seen it happen a few times over the years, but I am surprised it's happened that viciously and that recently. I feel like people have calmed down a lot, but I think it's generational. And I think a lot of older people work at Nyabugogo, work at Nyamirambo, work at Kimironko, you know, and I feel like it's a generational thing. I think younger people, at Kimironga, there was this one girl. I said, "Are you okay if I film you?" And she just like went. She did like this whole pose. I think a lot of younger people don't mind so much because it's generational, I think. I would remember like when I was a kid. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't common. Like for my grandparents, having your photograph taken was like an event. You would not want to just be recorded or filmed doing day-to-day things because you weren't prepared for it. You weren't, dressed up for it. So it's a generational thing, I think, compacted by the history of the country, the recent history. But again, I understand why she doesn't understand, because nothing in the tourism brochures would ever suggest to you that this could happen.
And not even like surround you as a mob, side with whoever came at you. He didn't even try to understand what I was saying. He literally was like, no, delete it. First of all, do you even know that I have your, and I probably do, and I don't care. Now I don't even care. I'm gonna show whatever I have. But he could have respectfully said it to attack me. Again, I'm so in shock because the fact that they all got physical with me, with a woman by herself, I am in shock right now. And the fact that, like, thank God, like I said, the police were across the street. Because if they were not, and I could not go to them and they have a machine gun, I don't know what would have happened. My phone would be gone. But who knows physically? Because again, they were grabbing me, pulling me. Oh my God.
I don't know why she keeps coming back to the machine gun though, because like, I don't think that there is any circumstance ever in which Rwandan police officers would turn their gun on Rwandan citizens. I cannot ever imagine that happening. I feel like the gun is more there as a symbol of power to... I mean, in the past, there have been a couple of small terrorism events here related to everything going on in DRC, and I feel like the guns are more sort of symbolic to kind of show, like, we could if we wanted to. You don't come to our city and cause trouble. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have never seen, and don't think I would ever see, Rwandan police point an actual gun at a group of Rwandan people, even if they're upset with a foreigner. I couldn't imagine them ever pointing the business end of a gun at a group of Rwandans. I don't think so.
Again, they were grabbing me, pulling me. Oh my God, guys. Okay, I just wanted to tell you, and I will show footage of it. And I know she felt bad, but it's not her fault. How would she know that this was going to happen? And she's like, you have to be careful because, not everybody wants to be recorded.
Blah, blah, blah. No, not blah, blah, blah. Don't blah, blah, blah that away. That is the absolute crux of the point here, is people, it's not just don't want to be on your family holiday pics, pathologically, deep in the core of them, do not wish to be photographed or to have their image shown. It's not blah, blah, blah. It's a very, very real desire to control where and when and to whom their image is shown. Again, often strongly related to the recent past, and absolutely their right to do that and to say that. In my videos, if somebody's like walking past in the background, fine. But usually if there's an up close, if somebody walks into shot and they're quite identifiable, I usually blur them out. Even if I stop to talk to somebody and they don't, like if I'm on my bike and my camera's recording, but the person doesn't know they're being recorded, I will blur them out because they don't know, they couldn't give consent, so yeah, you gotta be so damn careful and respectful of that. And I think people have every right not to want to be on camera. And also there's a long history here of slightly dubious production companies coming in and trying to make very sensational documentaries and pieces about Rwanda, often without fully explaining to Rwandans where it's going to be shown or, who they are or why they're filming. And so I think over the years, sometimes people have felt a bit taken advantage of, that people have come and said, oh, yeah, we're doing this documentary. Do you want to be on camera? And it's like, oh, yeah, you're friendly. I'll be on your document. And then it gets aired somewhere or shown somewhere out of context or in a different light to what they thought they were signing up for. And so there has been over the years, you know, a bit of an unpleasant feeling towards a lot of people filming. And also, you know, a lot of people turned up after the genocide, like international foreigners with cameras wanting to film Rwandans and portray certain things in certain light without the people being filmed having any say over what they were being filmed for. So there's that. So when she says, you know, people don't want to be recorded and blah, 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 I don't think blah, blah, blah. I think that is the crux, and they have every right not to be recorded, which is why you must ask before you start filming, not afterwards, because in Rwandan culture, nobody's going to tell you to stop once you start, but they ain't going to be happy about it.
And I get that. I understand that. But
do you, though? Do you?
Wants to be recorded and blah, blah, blah. And I get that. I understand that. But how many YouTube videos have you seen where people travel and they're recording? And if somebody tells you no, you move the camera or stop recording. So anyway, I'm going on and on. I'm upset. And again, this has never, ever, ever anything close like this happened to me in any country I've lived in, including the US when I lived in.
What do you mean included? The US is like a totally different example. The US is, you know, land of the free, apparently. You know, they have very different culture, very different laws. You know, people wouldn't think twice, and have also been connected to the internet probably since the 70s and early 80s. And, you know, people have been sharing their shit online all day, every day since then. So it's absolutely nothing novel, new or out of place for that to occur in America or most of Europe or the UK. Whereas here, you know, it's still a new thing. Like when I came back in 2014, and when I left Rwanda about 4.5 years before that, not a single person I knew had a mobile phone. I came back, everybody had a mobile phone. And then about 5 years later, everybody had a smartphone. You know, it's still very, very new here. Very, very new. So yeah, I just don't think that saying America as an example is on the same par. You know, it's not comparable.
Like this happened to me in any country I've lived in, including the US when I lived in New York, and I've been to rough neighborhoods. I've never had people trying to attack me like a mob. So be careful, you guys. I don't know if I'll even go there anymore. I think I'll just do like before, which is if I travel out of Kigali and I have to pass through there. But I don't think I'll ever go back, even though I will never record. That's okay.
I will say Nyabugogo is not a fun place to hang out. I mean, the novelty of how busy it is and how many buses and all this going on, the novelty is interesting for 5 minutes and then you need to leave. It's not somewhere that you really just want to go and hang out.
If I need to shop there, I will send someone to buy things, but I will not go there. So I just wanted to tell you guys that. Okay, so...
Right. I'm going to point out to you the moment at which I watched this bit of it. I'll point out to you the moment at which she should have stopped. She should have known to stop. And the other thing that I'm going to tell you here is I've watched her video before and I noticed she doesn't edit. So basically, I have a friend like this. She just pulls out her camera and off she goes. And because you're not editing, you're not looking for those specific shots. So if you watch my video about Kimironko, I'm very careful about what I film and who I film. And I'm looking for the artistic shot. And it's lots of different shots sewn together to make a narrative. Whereas this style, it's not bad. It's what a lot of live streamers would do. Is she's just walking around filming continuously. And because she's doing that, she's not aware of what's going on around her. I'll show you in a moment, because there's 1 second in here where you just know exactly where it's going. If you saw it and you were looking at it and you noticed it, you'd see exactly where this was going. And it's quite early on. But because she's so focused on what she's filming and looking through the camera and looking around, she didn't see it. She didn't see the warning. And I think this is why, you know, again, you've got to ask before you start filming, and you've got to be quite mindful of what you're filming. You can't just start wandering around doing this, because how many of these people I mean, just to go back again to 94, how many of these people were victims? How many of these people were perpetrators? How many of these people are afraid of cameras or being caught on camera because maybe they did something in the past they don't want to be recognized by, the world, or, you can't say for certain what is going through somebody's mind, but there's a whole load of layers to this that you as a foreigner, especially if you've only been here for 2 years, you won't quite get it. Right, let me show you.
I am in Nyabugogo modern market. This is my first time.
That's kind of ironic, modern market, but she gets this reception. Okay, the irony there is quite funny.
Nyabugogo modern market. This is my first time here, you guys, and I came with some friends, and they left me already. Like, I don't know where they went. Okay, anyway, I'll find them. So it's very busy, as you can see. And
I mean, it's fascinating. If you are a tourist wandering around, Africa or Rwanda, it's fascinating. You want to get this stuff on camera. It's really interesting. It's like it shows the country.
This is the car we came in. A friend, CJ, amazing. And then her friend, they're both from Netherlands. We came together. I'm trying to find, why did they leave me? Like, how am I supposed to, oh, there they are. Oh, I was like, how could they leave me? So all these vegetables, fruit, lots of shoes, like the house shoes, house slippers I call them, that everybody wears it outside here. And what else? Backpacks.
Here we go.
I'm not going in yet. I'm not gonna go by myself. But look at how pretty. Look at how pretty the things are. The fruits and vegetables. Ooh.
Did you see that? So she's very busy. She's looking at the oil and the tomatoes. Watch the woman with the blue headdress. Watch this lady here. In fact, I should really blur her face, but, just watch this. Watch the woman with the blue turban.
The things are the fruits and vegetables. Ooh.
You saw that. But the camera immediately pans to the fruit and vegetables. So the lady filming is just interested in what's on the stall. But that is the point I would have gone, I need to stop filming now. Because the way that woman's head went down immediately is a sign of extreme discomfort. And if she not been doing continuous filming, and if she'd asked, can I film this, the woman would have said, no, don't film me. You get it very readily. If you ask before you start filming, you will get a very ready response of yes or no, no problem. But if you start filming, she's got no way to redress there. And she might be thinking, if I say something, then I'm on camera saying no, and that could still end up being shown to somebody, and then they're going to wonder why I'm saying no, and then they're going to be suspicious of me. You know what I mean? But yeah, that was the exact second when I saw that woman's head go down that quickly. That's when I thought she's going to have a problem here. Yeah, look, she's deeply uncomfortable. There's another lady there who's looking to the side and is refusing to look back, like unnaturally holding that away stare for a prolonged period of time until the camera's passed. Yeah, she doesn't look back. Yeah, she looks away again. The second the camera comes back, she looks away again.
So how do I send him money? Yeah. Okay, so I'm buying oranges right now. I bought the orange and then the green one.
Yeah. So what's going on here psychologically is she is totally focused on the produce. And to her, it's a trip to the market and I'm just going to film, the things I'm buying to eat. And everybody around her psychologically is thinking that camera is on them. They're thinking, I'm being filmed right now and that camera is on me. I don't know who this person is. I don't know where it's going to be shown. I don't know why she's filming it, or who she is or why she's here. That is what's going on in their heads. And yet she's oblivious to it because she's so focused on what she's buying on the market. The minute that woman's head went down and the other woman who kept looking away, the minute that the camera went round, at that point, if she'd seen that and really taken that in, she would have gone, oh, hold on a minute. Oh, no, I shouldn't be doing this. There's something isn't right about this. But she just carries on. And I understand because it's fun. It's a beautiful market. She's buying produce. You want to show people what you're buying at the local market. But everybody around her is currently deeply suspicious because she hasn't even said hello. And in Rwanda, in Africa, you greet people. You say hello, you have a conversation before you shove a camera at them. You say hello to people before you do that.
Because CJ told me that the green one is better than the orange, so we'll see. So I'm paying right now.
Right up in the face
Getting
there.
the change. Okay, thank you. And now we're gonna explore. And what is your name? Eh?
Prince.
Prince?
Prince.
Pete?
Prince.
Prince. Okay. So Prince is walking with us because CJ, when she
I haven't seen beyond this point, so see how it progresses.
helps her shop for things, so he's gonna be walking around with us and interpreting. Look at that. Okay. They're like, do you want tomatoes? I know.
I'm feeling quite anxious now, knowing where this is going. I'm feeling quite anxious.
She was like, apple? I said, no.
Oh, must not eat fish.
Oh yeah, carnivore.
Yes, eat some meat.
Ooh, I have to look where I'm going.
I actually don't know what this is. What's that? What's that? What is that bark? I have to admit, I've never seen that before. What is it? It's some kind of bark off a tree, but if you know what it is, let me know. I've never seen it.
Okay, so I bought like tomatoes, broccoli, cauliflower, oranges, like
those bowls, it's usually cassava flour, could be wheat flour, but often cassava flour. It's quite impressive to see them stacked up. This is what I mean. It's so interesting to look around a local market, and to learn what everything is. I mean, that's why we travel, isn't it? You travel to go and see things and learn about things. And, Rwandan markets are very colourful, very interesting to look at. So you fully understand why she wants to look around.
Okay, so now we're going outside of the market to get some meat. So this is what it looks like. Look at all the motos.
Yeah, again, like she's just walking around indiscriminately filming everybody. So by the law of averages, you are going to get somebody with that number of people. You're going to get somebody who really doesn't want to be filmed.
So this is Nyabugogo. I know there's like a bus station around here. I think there's a lot of buses that come here. The only time I've been here is on my way to Kigali. So this is the first time I'm actually exploring the area. And it's not that chaotic here, actually. Look at the motos, you guys. Look how many are like lined up over there. There's crazy.
It's really sad as well because you can hear her. She's like, oh, look at it. It's amazing. And she's enjoying herself and she's doing what, you know, touristy people and expats do and showing her life and, you know, big upping the country and saying how nice it is and how interesting it is. And it's just sad to know what's coming because it shouldn't. You know what I mean? It shouldn't.
Okay, we're gonna buy meat, or she's gonna buy meat, but I'll look to see what they have. Let's see. Okay, so here we go.
I feel like we're building up to it like a jump scare, you know?
This is where the meat is, and everybody's staring at me. I don't know if you're not supposed to record here. So here's the butcher.
Oh, I thought she was going to show what happened. She just kind of cut straight off there. I thought she was going to show what happened. She didn't. We watched all of that. She didn't show what happened. I guess she stopped recording immediately. But yeah, the lady said, don't film. So I'm curious to know exactly how it played out after that. Yeah, I thought we'd get to see more of exactly what happened. But yeah, you could see coming down that I think, a bit of a different vibe maybe. I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it? Oh, I said I was going to look at some of the comments because I remember that I had a little bit of a glance at the comments and I felt some of them were quite harsh. Okay, let's have a look. Right. I'm so sorry for a terrifying situation you went through, but I was watching your video and realised that it was actually a language barrier that caused the problem. You see, when you began to take videos of strangers, the people became uncomfortable because, being Rwandese, I heard them complain about it, and I think they must have told each other about it, and it resulted in a confrontation. Keep in mind that these people are mothers, fathers, and children of somebody, and they hustle extremely hard for every little penny they get to support their families. And believe me that explaining to them about social media is useless. Yeah, most people, I would say, probably don't know what social media is. You know, it's not something that features in their daily life. I mean, how can you explain social media stuff to a person who has no idea if tomorrow morning there's food on the table for their children and must fight to get it done? And plus some of them are illiterate. My advice to all expats or even tourists is taking a Rwandese person with you always until you fully speak Kinyarwanda and learn the history of what Rwanda went through to fully understand our present and future. So he is also alluding to, you know, what people did in the past. And the history of Rwanda, the recent history of Rwanda, can have a very strong influence on why people don't want their photographs taken. But yeah. Even me, you know, I'm fairly comfortable wandering around, but when I went to Kimironko, I asked my friend Leandra to take me because I wanted somebody there who could not just ask, but explain what I was doing there in Kinyarwanda, you know, as one Rwandan person to another Rwandan person, why the Mzungu is here with a camera, you know, just so that I was sure they gave consent before I filmed anything. And that was, you know, that was a game changer. And even to Leandra, many people were like, no, don't want to be on it, you know, and that is absolutely fine. But you've got to ask before you start filming. It's unfortunate what happened to you, but I'm not surprised because Nyabugogo is known to be the least safe place in Rwanda, even for natives. Yeah, pretty much. It's chaos. So I can only imagine how scary it was and to not speak the language, while 80 to 90% of people working in Nyabugogo only speak Kinyarwanda, especially in the market and bus station. Yeah. Wow, this is how it is in Rwanda. No, not all of Rwanda. Not all of Rwanda at all. No, just she was in a dodgy area of town at the wrong time. Yeah, and just didn't understand what she was getting into. This was the one I thought was a bit harsh. I understand your perspective, but claiming ignorance or entitlement does not justify the behaviour. Oh, sod off. She's not claiming entitlement. She, claiming ignorance. Of course she didn't know. One of my pet bugbears is that stupid saying, you should have known better. If somebody knew better, they wouldn't have done it. They didn't know any better. If they'd known what the consequence of their actions was going to be, they wouldn't have done it. So to say, you should have known better. Oh, you can't claim ignorance. Of course she was ignorant. She had no idea what she was getting into. If she did know what she was getting into, she wouldn't have done it. So get off your flipping high horse, mate. Get off your high horse. Grow some compassion. Sorry. You acknowledged noticing that people were uncomfortable with the camera as soon as you began recording. Despite that, you continued to stop and restart filming multiple times after clear signs of discomfort. Like I said, she wasn't focused on the people. She was focused on the produce. And I know, because having made a lot of videos myself, I do that. I get focused on what I'm zooming in on, and you're not aware of what's going on around you. So when I watched the video, I saw immediately that people were getting uncomfortable. When she was filming, she wasn't aware of it. She wasn't. If she had been, she wouldn't have done it. And I think this is the thing. People are so fast to jump on people and say, oh, you should have known better. You should have been flipping psychic. Nobody is. None of us are until we get hit with like the repercussions of something, until, we're in the thick of it. And it's like, oh, yeah, no, I shouldn't have done that because now I know what the consequence of that is. In Rwanda, most people are passive and tend to avoid direct confrontation, which is why they wouldn't tell you to stop, especially with tourists. Yeah, this is widely understood. Situations like this rarely escalate, which makes this case unusual. Yeah, it's a little bit unusual, I have to say. It is a little, but then to be honest, a random foreigner turning up and walking through the market with their phone out is also unusual for the people at the market. That's not something they see every day. So it was an unusual event all round. You're welcome to live and chill in Rwanda. Trust at 3 a.m. you can wake up for a run. Female, male, it doesn't matter. My advice, let people be. Sorry for such a horrible experience, but you also sound a bit too entitled. I don't think she does. I think listening to the way that she sounds shook up. She's getting defensive because she's been through a shocking experience. And we all do that. If something happens and we're like shook to our core, which, if you're a woman and you're getting grabbed or touched, or you're afraid for your personal safety, it affects you. And, you're coming down off this kind of jittery kind of, ooh. And so she sounds flustered, she sounds defensive, but it's coming from a place of fear, not entitlement, I don't think. And, she's justifying it a lot with, well, I've never had this happen before. That's the adrenaline wearing off, Give her a little bit of grace. That's the adrenaline wearing off. No, I don't agree with this. The people don't understand you, and naturally they will react negatively. Now, this is where I agree with her, is it is not always natural in every situation to not understand somebody and to react aggressively or negatively. That's not normal, that's not normal, especially when the person isn't actually directly interacting with you or directly shoving a camera in your face. It might be uncomfortable, a bit weird to see somebody filming in public, but it is not natural that just because you don't understand somebody, you react negatively towards them. That isn't healthy. I was going to say, it isn't healthy. Like, there are many countries in the world where people are, just going to maybe, just walk past and leave you alone, or even welcome you. And, it's a very specific vibe in Rwanda some days. So, you know, I was going to leave a comment on here. You know, I want to give her a hug. I think it's a scary situation. I've been in similar situations, and I've seen how fast it can turn. Like, everything's okay until it's not, and then it really isn't. You know, so I would agree it's extremely rare nowadays. I think she was very much in an area that tourists and foreigners do not go. If you live here, you don't go there because it's chaos, it's hectic. And if you're a tourist, you probably go to somewhere like Kimironko or a slightly friendlier market. I wouldn't suggest Nyabugogo is a fun place for a day out, but you know, she didn't know what she was walking into. She wasn't doing anything, you know, deliberately offensive. So, but you know, she didn't know what she was stepping into there, and she didn't have a very good awareness or grasp of how recent history affects modern Rwanda today. And I think as well, she probably, you know, she's lived here for 2 years. She's come, you know, when you move to a country, you want to big up that country. You want to like shout about it and say how good it is, and, you know, highlight and showcase the good things about a country. And also, you know, the media, the way that Rwanda is portrayed to the world is, you know, we're on, what is it, Aston Villa football shirts now. I think it was Arsenal before. You know, so we are marketing hard to the world that this is a fun, easy and nice place to come and explore Africa, especially for the first time. And so kind of like you come with a very specific image in your head. And every now and again, something will happen that fundamentally shakes your view of, you know, your image of what you thought it would be and the reality, especially in a lot of areas that are not as affluent, not as used to meeting foreigners, not as sort of perhaps globally aware or connected on social media, or you know what I mean? You know, you will encounter certain things occasionally that make you question the image that you originally had versus the reality. And, you know, that's all part of it. I think especially living here long term, that's part of it. There's not much more I can say to this other than, you know, I'd be kind to her. You know, that was a terrifying experience. And it's easy to judge through a screen and say, oh, yeah, well, she should have known. Oh, if she'd known, she wouldn't have done it, would she? There are many things in all of our lives that if we'd known, we wouldn't have done. But we didn't know till we did them, and now we know. So, you know, deep breath, moving on. So I hope she's all right now. And like I said, I wasn't going to react to a second video from the same person. I try not to do that, but it was just such an interesting one. And I do empathise. I've seen it happen. So anyway, I mean, like I say, it's extremely rare. And I am extremely surprised that it happened to that degree today. In 2026. That's how old I'm getting, is I have to check what year we're in every time now in 2020. I keep missing the second two off. I keep saying 2006 and 2008 when I mean 2028 and 2026. Oh, I'm getting old, man. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. It's been quite a long video, actually. I hope you don't mind me waffling on, but I do think it was a really interesting one. So, let me know your experiences. Has something like this ever happened to you in Rwanda or anywhere else? Let me know below, and see you in the next one.